Hey there. So today I want to talk a little bit about the fertile fields of comic books. I love to touch on this subject, and especially when we're talking about number or we're talking about cause and effect, because essentially what we've seen are deteriorating products, people that cannot act professional to save their lives, and of course, that kind of stuff, it's going to have impact. Now, if you don't know anything about comic books, the down and dirty version, 2017, terrible year. Talking about a 10% decline in demand, pricing falls through the floor. 2018, another 6% decline in demand. The companies out there, they respond by raising that pricing point up so they can make their money. Now, who pays for that there? You could say the consumer, but the consumer isn't you and I. It's the physical locales that are out there that are paying for all of this, because comic books, they're rarely returnable. That means that you take on the greatest risk, hoping that you're going to get some kind of reward. Now, back in the day when comics were cheaper, that was actually a good model. You could go out and you could make lots of money this way. But as comic books have gotten more and more expensive, even if you buy them at wholesale prices, what you get out of that, well, you get things like this. You get pictures of empty locales where people are saying, hey, we're going to have to shut down another store. This part was from Mile High Comics, and it's terrible actually seeing this kind of stuff. There's nothing to be celebrated within it. And like they say within this, they talk about the madness of cover prices as they reach $5 plus range. And actually, you're talking about comics that have actually reached the $10 plus range in some instances. They did talk about here the risk versus reward worked at under $1, but now it's crippling. Then they talk about the way that this sets up, comparing it to traditional measures within the magazine business, where you have 90% of the sales that are going to occur within the 15 days of release. If they do not occur within that, well, pretty much. You may make a few sales here and there. There may be some long-term residual demand as back issues, but for the most part, you're talking about unsold issues that have declined in value by at least 90%. And that's saying that you don't have to eat the cost. Now, if you're talking about the wholesale cost of that being upwards of $2 each, and when I'm saying, they're saying a $5 comic book. Imagine a $10 comic book. Again, $4 you have on the line. If you end up eating 10, 20, 30, 40 of those, how many can you eat before you don't make profits? Again, that's why you end up with empty stores this way. Now, we actually have had people that have talked about this too. Retailers have talked about how DC has shut down any line to retailers within 2018 because it's been so bad. And Marvel, well, in 2017, some retailers decided to speak up, saying that the things they were putting out weren't any way marketable. And when they said that, of course, they were called ists and phobes and on, because welcome to current year. Now here we have Coliseum of Comics talking about how you could change this kind of stuff up. They give 8 recommendations within this, and I think that they're pretty good. I thought we would go through these. We won't touch on them a lot. We'll touch on them briefly, and I think that these are actually pretty good. So the number one problem that they list is 90% of the books coming off the stands at the end of their shelf life have zero value as back issues. When you look at that too, they're talking about how like a 3-issue miniseries 6 months later, that doesn't have anything within it. It doesn't have any value. So when you look at their costs, they say between February and October, we had at cost nearly $100,000 in books that were taken off the shelves. 60% of that were instantly unsellable. 30% will languish if they're still here in 3 months. 60% of that. So $60,000 in books, just bam, off the shelves. That's bad. Their solution, they talk about how basically they're looking for titles that if they fall 90% range is slated for sellout. We used to order back stock and still will on that 10%, but for the rest are on their own. This means we cut to obvious sales. So they're going with obvious sales within that. If they do that, they say, they estimate that will put a minimum $20,000 in their pocket each quarter. minimum. I mean, think about that. But of course, the comic industry, it would say, hey, we don't want you doing that. That's terrible, because they're not going to get as much money. But this is what retailers have to do. They have to be smarter within it. They say publishers, if they want this done, what they're going to have to do is, after that issue 1 decline, they're going to have to give them to them at cheaper costs, because they can do that. But of course, they won't want to do that. They're going to want that instant return. They're going to want to knock out more and more LCSs because of it. So hey, number 2 problem they note: reboots. No surprise, but every jumping on point creates in its wake a jumping off point. Now, as they note with this, continuity problems. Why exactly would people want to go in and to pick up something disjointed when there's no continuity? I really understand that too, because I find myself not wanting to pick up some disjointed thing here and there and pay full price. I mean, heck, sometimes I don't want to go and trade weight for that either. Sometimes I'll just pass on it because it has no relevance or meaning, and that's a problem. It's a problem that you can see within those mini reboots that you notice all of the time. And well, when people are noticing that, and when they say that they're not going to have any value as far as later storytelling, why exactly would they pick those up? Now, this person says that publishers should commit to a 5-year plan, and I agree with that. But more than that, they need to hire people that actually understand what's come before. That is a huge problem within comic books. They hire people to write that have no idea or no inclination to learn anything about comics. They have editors that barely know the game of editing at all, little on anything about comics. These people, they don't want to be in the industry, and it shows. It shows that they haven't cared about it, and well, it shows on the back end as well. Number 3, first issues. This is the most abusive part of comic ordering, and I have to say that that is true. They define first issue as one-offs, of course, then renumbers, and so on. When they're talking about every number 1 these days seems to be a double size or larger than normal, which adds $1 or more to the cover price, exasperating retailers' exposure. I would say that they don't even add that. They just put that number 1 on there, and they figure you got to pay another $1 for it. Their solution, if it hits a weekly series, it's predatory publishing, and it gets sub-only orders. 0 for the stand. Sellouts in 3 months. No one will remember it anyways. There you go right there. You want to send a message to the companies out there about this predatory practice. Stop ordering it unless people want to buy it. If they ask for it, maybe you pick up 1 or 2 for the shelves if you're really worried about it. But if you want to send a message, you're going to have to decline picking it up for a larger part. Pick them up if people, again, want sub only, but that's it. On one-shots, we order subs, and what we feel will be a guaranteed sellout, which is what we think we might sell, minus 20%. This goes for any second issue as well that we have to order before number 1 hits the stand. What publishers should do, set a reasonable number based on similar books, which should not be 3 times of one of the mega crossover events. Anything above that, sell it to us at a reduced price, they're saying. And that makes sense too. If you want them to carry it, you need to give them incentive to carry it, because they are taking on all the risk. Number 4, special covers from issue to issue. This is something that is hugely predatory too. Something I've talked about, where they try to make all of their bottom line like that. They'll go out, they will issue up to 40 covers on some number 1s. How exactly does a comic shop thrive within that? And they discuss this, and one of the things that causes too, it causes people not to be able to look at something and to gauge demand off of titles. It inflates this idea of what's out there. If you look at this too, you can see it reflected in certain titles out there. If you look at Fantastic Four, a reboot that came this year, you have almost a 70% decline from a 1 to 2 because there are so many comic book covers that are shoved in that you have all of these physical locales. They're picking up demand within it, all of these shipped units, and you can't tell how many are actually moving, how much demand there is, and on. By the second issue, all of the speculators drop off, plus a lot of that drops off because there are far less covers, and you see about a 70% decline rather than, say, a 20 to 30%, which is expected. It's insane when you see that. Their solution, order to sell out than ordering blind, sounds much better for their financial end. I'll be cutting to absolute sales level. Before anyone cries that I'm being the maker of my own low self-prophecy by cutting orders, let me assure you that each of my stores will carry iconic characters and books championed by staff. They're just saying that, hey, I'm not going to carry things. I'm not going to carry all the risk. What publishers can do, cull the stand-filling minis. I know bottom line right now, but they're killing the market, and that is exactly what is happening. Of course, talking about that makes you a monster, a wrong thinker, and on. Look at exactly how customers have been received when they talk about why they won't buy comics. Oh, you're just a monster. In current year, you're this or that. Yeah, my wallet appreciates that. It totally makes me want to stick around. Number 5, discounts. I thought this actually speaks to something too. They talk about the cost of doing business within that. After 7 years of double-digit growth, sales, they've fallen flat over 2 years. Prices go up, as they say. They're mentioning the same thing we talk about there, but it just means fewer comics sold for more money. Math is, I can no longer allow publishers space at 50% non-returnable discount. The sales tail is too short, and the variables are too many to accurately gauge sell-through. I have 2,000 dedicated fans to all things geeky that come through. They want all of the stuff that comes in, like a well-lit store, good reputation and on, and they have to pay a lot to provide that. You have your expenses, I have mine. Marvel also can lower that cost. You can see where they're talking about the $4.99 books offered to Walmart that go 3 for $5, meaning they could offer them for substantially cheaper, and they did to Walmart because they wanted to get in the door there. These are for 100-page books too. But instead, no, LCSs, they're considered to be part of the publication machine. They're going to be there for distribution. So you don't have to actually go and really give them any kind of incentive. They're on the hook. They have to be there. Now, if you're talking about companies that have to be there, of course, you're not going to give them the best thing. You're going to basically try to bleed them dry. They talk about their solution, sub-only, as they say, on books that are 50% or less discount. So, make me need to carry your product. That's the same thing customers say. Make me want to come in stores and buy your product. But of course, LCSs, they're going to have to stand up and do that. And then they talk about books without a market, which I think you can see with a lot of titles. Look at stuff like Iceman out there. Iceman that basically has been revamped, even though by now it's selling right at 10,000 units shipped. So you're talking about 10,000 units going to local comic shops. You see stacks of them on shelves, and they're saying, if we sell less than 10 copies at a 8 stores, then it's a subscription only. When carrying books of lower sales titles, we only have a 73% sales through over 6 months for a 30% profit. They're talking about eating a lot of books within that too. Sub only for low sales, they'll be raising that to 15 copies after the first quarter. So they talk about that. You need to do promotion, and it's amazing how pros especially respond to that idea. My God, look at Alterna. My God, why do you expect us to promote our own books? I mean, we just make them and on, but we don't want to get our hands dirty with those people. In fact, we need to be able to block hundreds of thousands of people on social media, treat people like garbage, and we're not even going to talk about our works because we're too obsessed with politics. Here, they talk about the rush and inconsistent scheduling, throwing off the bottom line. I have to say that that's not good either. When you look at Doomsday Clock, where it could have been versus where it is, yeah. Then they discuss promo items, and I think they bring up a good point within this. They say that people want instant profits as far as publishers go. And well, businesses, they don't work that way. You're going to have to do something about that. You know, they're not exactly, as they say, so let's face it, we're not exactly partners, but we're all sitting at the same buffet. But the crumbs at the retail end of the table seem to be dwindling. We need to be partners. Some could survive via online and mail order, but far too many people would lose their livelihood if another 500 stores closed. There's a point where the system in place cannot be sustained by the surviving entities. There you go. I mean, when you're saying about that point of no return, they're saying another 500 stores gone. There you are. The way you're going, you would be lucky to maintain a decade at the rate of closures here before you hit that. I would say 5 to 7 years, the way that things have been going, maybe even faster, depending, and that is a scary thing. But anyhow, tell me what you think about this list. I know that the industry, it's not going to listen to this either. They get their money out of it. What do they care? They're going to get their money out of the special covers. They're going to get their money out of the first issues. They don't care what transpires on the retailer end, because as they said just then, you're not partners. They're not sitting down at a table with you. They'll get theirs at the expense of you. They're not your friends. And unfortunately, these days, you have many a marketer trying to curry favor with Marvel and on, thinking that they're going to be there for you. Well, they're not going to keep your lights on. They're not going to put food on your table. It's the consumers that do that. But anyhow, you let me know what you think about this stuff. I think it's insane, personally. If you like this kind of content, please subscribe, hit that bell, like, do all the wonderful things, backflips through the owl, just whatever. But also, leave comments. I'm curious what people think about this. New stuff daily. I appreciate you returning. And like I said, I want to know your opinion on it. But above everything, I want to thank you for popping in. So thanks. Appreciate that.